So again, this is just really a quick review of Google Calendar and what it can do for you, and maybe help you with some ideas to institute if you haven't already. As we know, Google keeps making pretty big advancements every day, and so keeping up with the updates is interesting. So I try to keep those out for, let everybody know about them. But considering we're all back on campus just about, made sense to do a review of this amongst other applications. So the first thing that I like to look at is the idea of calendar, as settings and notifications. And that's just my silly little meme there. But I think the biggest thing is for people just getting used to using their calendar, and some use it because they really have no choice. But if you really live in it and work with it, it can really save you some time. So the first thing that I like to look at is settings and notifications. You're welcome to do this along with me. So I'm going to get out of this periodically just so you can see what I'm talking about. But when you're in your calendar, if you have a variety of calendars or your main calendar checked, you just go to the gear at the top right, and that's your settings menu. You have a gear in just about all of your applications. So similar to this would be Gmail. But when you go there, you'll see settings and you'll see some other options, including trash. One of the items which we might get into a little bit later is the idea that you can actually restore calendar events that you may have deleted. So similar to, in Gmail, if you've archived or deleted something, you can move it back into your inbox. If that happens, and you just want to take a peek, you can go in here after 30 days, all of the events that you've trashed. So maybe it was a draft and then you decided you don't want it. It will be in here after 30 days, it will be deleted. But if you go in here and you see your list of all different things, you can select it and then restore it. So that's a nice tool that most of us forget exists. But if you're interested in maybe what you've put in trash by accident for events, you can just go to your gear and the trash item. But right above that is settings. And if you go to settings, and I know you, along with others who might end up watching this, have probably looked at this when we first went to Google, which, believe it or not, was 2 years ago. And so it might be a good time to check over these again and see if there's anything you want to change. But for the most part, when you're in settings in the calendar in general, it goes through all of these on the left here. It goes through each of those areas. And for the most part, these are likely how you want them. But certainly if there's another time zone that you work with or you want to change that, you can do that as well. Some people like that. Event settings. If you're someone who tends to have traditional 30-minute meetings or 90-minute meetings, and you want to make that the standard on your calendar, you can do that. You can change it to any one of these time increments. You don't have to. Most of us have it at 60 minutes, so an hour. And of course, if we end up having a meeting that's 30, we just change it for each event, right? And you can keep doing it that way. But for people who might just generally have 90-minute meetings and that's their standard, it might make more sense for them to go ahead and default that to 90 minutes or 120 minutes. So hopefully that makes sense. So that could be helpful for certain calendars or certain people's schedule if you wanted to change your event settings. If you don't, then the default is an hour. And again, you can change that amount of time, as you probably know at this point, for each event all the time. This just saves some time so you don't have to do it every single time. And then you've got some other defaults here, excuse me, and then notification settings. So notification settings, desktop settings, is the idea of getting notified with that little box that pops up in your calendar. You typically have to be in your calendar or have your calendar open to see it. So at the very end of this, I will give you 2 other options for extensions to add on that give you a few other notifications if that's something that you like as well. Because if you want a ping or more of a noticeable notification, you'd have to do that outside of calendar. So I do have that.
I would definitely be interested in that.
Yeah. So especially in the beginning when we did this, we noticed it was just set up a little bit differently than Outlook or the calendars we were using. And so at that time, I know I've been using an extension And the good thing is there's not a lot of other extensions I think anybody needs in Calendar, but that would be one of them. And so there's 2 options that I would recommend. So before I'm done, I'll be sure to let you know those and how that works. But nonetheless, you should still certainly set it up here so you have that, just set it up, but it may just not be, again, if you're not looking at your calendar in that moment, it might not be as useful. And then viewing options, like what does your calendar look like? How do you want to view it? Do you want to see the weekends? If this is just your work calendar, maybe you don't want to, and then you can uncheck that. Do you want to see all the events that you decline? I don't, because that would just, for me, be a little too confusing. But if you wanted to, you could select that. For certain types of maybe schedules, or I can think of this more in like semester times. You want to show week numbers. So if you do anything by a certain number of the week, you could choose to view that. You can see I don't, but if that works. And then, basically so today is Monday. Tomorrow, when I look at Monday's events, they're past. So for me, they kind of dim, they look dull, so I can tell that those are past events. You can choose that. And then if you want to view your calendar side by side. And then of course, there's some other ideas here. Do you want to do it 4 days? Do you want your view to be bigger? All the days, and so forth. So, take a peek and see if any of those options are worth looking into. And I'll say this probably more than once. Anything you choose here or change on this settings page can always be changed again. So you check everything right now and you press save. In an hour, if you decide you don't like the look of that or the feel after you've lived in it a little, you can go back into your gear, your settings menu, and uncheck or select other items. So don't feel like, whatever you do here, you have to live with forever. You might need to just see if it works or, what does that look like? So feel free to do that. And then events from Gmail. Do you want, this doesn't happen to me very often because I apparently don't do anything very exciting like reservations or flights. But if you allow it when you get certain email that looks like you have a reservation or air flight, Google will go ahead and kind of create an automatic event for you in your calendar, save you a little bit of time. If you want to do that, you can feel free to check that option as well. And then the next one I've talked about several times, so I know you might already have this set up, but there's an addition to that. So working hours was something we had originally, and now we have a location. So why I like working hours is because if we can get everyone on board to using their calendar, and I'm, certainly up for the challenge, it makes everyone else's lives easier when we're scheduling. So if you go to schedule something with me, let's say at 5:30 on Monday, you'll notice right away, it'll say out of my working hours, and it will be grayed out. So it's not as if you're prevented, but it certainly prevents you from the extra hassle, right? Oh wait, I already know she's not here, she's not available. So having my working hours allows for other people to schedule with me to see when I'm in, generally speaking, right, in or out of the office. And then in addition to that, this right side column also allows me to say where. So there are certain days of the week that I work remote. So I can either say in the office, at home. If I don't want to be specific, I can say remote or unspecified, or even somewhere else. Why that's important is, again, maybe I want, you want to meet with me in person. Well, that would be a little bit tricky if you know that I'm not in the office on those particular days. So it, again, just allows for more efficient scheduling if that information is there. And this would just be for those within our domain, so Fitchburg State, who can see kind of busy and free, and so forth. So it's, if you're not comfortable saying you're at home necessarily, but you want to say, just be aware I'm not actually on campus, then you could put something else here, as I did as well. So I think that that's incredibly important because, again, just allows us to schedule a little bit more efficiently with each other rather than the constant emails back and forth. And the caveat there is always the other person has to have their calendar updated. And I think we're making pretty big strides in that event as well. So those are some other settings to definitely look at if you haven't already set those up. So those are the general settings within the gear or the calendar settings page. And then on the left side of my screen here, and yours as well, you'll also see settings for my calendars or settings for other calendars. So I have various other calendars that I've either created through Google Classroom or through, for instance, this one that says test, what have you. So I've got some other calendars here, and then I've got my calendars, and then I've got other calendars that I've been invited to that I might not necessarily have complete access to, but I can view as well. So within these particular calendars, I also have additional permissions or settings, I should say. So if I go to test, so I'm just going to go to my test calendar. I just selected test on the left. Now you can see I'm specifically looking at this calendar. So you should have one that has your name. And then if you have any other calendars, something else, then even if it's a department calendar, you should be able to see certain settings for that. And you can just see here for test, I'm able to, if I wanted to share this with anyone in particular, I could do that. Remember though, that you do not need to share a calendar with someone just to see if they are free or busy, or vice versa. If somebody wants to see if you're available and then wants to schedule time on your calendar with you, you do not need to share your whole calendar with them. Sharing a calendar would really be with the idea of them managing it in some sense. So if there's a department calendar that you're all adding to or managing, then it would make sense for all of you to have some sort of access. So in this case, I don't know, but if I wanted to share some other, I would have the ability to let them see all event details, make changes, and so forth. So for instance, in our department, we have a lot of student technicians, and so we have a calendar that keeps track of all of their time. They all have access to that, so they can actually put in any changes to their schedule. And then everyone else in our department can see that really easily. If I just wanted them to see, when they're working, when not having access to it, then I would just change the permission there so that they could only see, maybe see the event details and so forth. So depending on who it is and what access you want. And then you can add notifications. This is where I would specifically bring your attention to when we're talking about specific calendar settings, because we looked at the general settings for everything, right? How do I basically want everything to look for all of my calendars? But then you can drill down to specific calendars. So for my Allison Bundle calendar, I might want certain notifications versus this particular test calendar. You can see here, I really don't have any notifications set up. So I would suggest that you look specifically at your main work calendar. That's usually your name. And then any other calendars you can do this for as well. But do you want to have any event notifications? So when you have events on your calendar, you're going to, in this case, I would be notified 10 minutes in advance. I could also add additional ones. So maybe I want to do it actually so that I'm getting it 10 minutes in advance and then also 1 day in advance. And maybe I also want to make it so it's 5 minutes beforehand, and so on and so forth. So you can put quite a few notifications if that would be helpful to you. And again, these are for each particular calendar. So, and then I can do the same for all day notifications. And then down below, you have two options. You can either get email notifications or none. So for new events that are that are added to my calendar, so you make an event with me, I want to be emailed. I want an email notification, right? I don't want it just to pop up on my calendar. It's a practical matter. I should see it, but I would like to get an email about it. Changed events. So anytime someone's changed an event that was on my calendar, I could get an email. Canceled events, an event that's canceled, get an email. And then if I want to get an email every time guests respond to a specific event, if that's important to me, that could also be because I'm the host of the event. I might want to get emails for that. And then the last one that some people aren't aware of is you can actually get a daily agenda. And so if you select this, you could get a daily agenda of anything for that day on this particular calendar, emailed to you every single day. And then if you choose, oh, I don't like this, you can go back in and select none. But this is a nice feature that I like to remind everyone that they can certainly turn on. If you like to just kind of get an email that says, here's where you're going to be at all the different times, while certainly you can look at your calendar, this just gives you a quick look at your daily agenda or schedule. You can do that as well. So you do have these other notifications that are really important to look at and decide. And again, for this test calendar, I didn't have a lot of those turned on because I don't really use it in that way. But for my main calendar, I certainly would. I like to be emailed for just about everything. So keep in mind that that's there if you're interested in just, again, using your calendar a little bit more efficiently and getting those notifications that can come in. So that's settings. That's a big deal, basically. We talked about working hours and location. Like I said, this allows you to kind of show where you are and set expectations for what kind of events or locations you're going to be in. For me, I like this, and I also like the next feature because I do work remotely on occasion. And when that is, of course, I had this fear one day. I woke up, it's tough to be me, and said, oh my gosh, what if they don't realize that I'm not in the office and they're all having this lovely meeting together and I'm sitting like waiting on a Google Meet? So what's nice is if I set my working hours, they should be able to see whether they can expect me in or not, and whether they need to set up a Google Meet. And then in addition to that is, and I sent this out a few weeks ago, but the idea of how you'll join a meeting. So when you get invited to a meeting from now on, you should be able to see when you press going, yes or no, there's a drop-down box that lets you decide whether you just want to say yes, or yes, I'm going to meet in a meeting room, like in person, or I'm going to meet virtually. And so you can see in this example, Lori is going to meet in person. Oops. But Edward and Jeffrey are going to be virtual. So this allows the meeting host or whoever is running the meeting to know, we need to have an in-person situation and also create a Google Meet or some other way of virtually meeting. And that way too, you're not waiting for 5 people when in fact a couple are going to be meeting virtually. So again, it just allows us to schedule a little bit more efficiently. You don't have to send an email saying, are you coming in? Do we need to do this in Google Meet? Until people use this more commonly, we might still have to do that. But the goal, of course, is it's all in your calendar. You won't need to go out and email or connect with people if the idea, it's all connected here and everybody's putting this information in. So I think that's a great idea as well. Again, especially from someone who's in that predicament at times. Hopefully you've used that. If you haven't, feel free. I always like to go over the busy and free search and remind everyone that that's something that can be done again without one, usually having to email people and say, when can we meet? And 2, without having to have exact permission to their calendar. So I say, you know what, I really want to have a meeting tomorrow. I can go here and I select it once. I can also double click it, and that's how I can create an event. Or I can go up here to the left and press create. When I do that, by default, I'm creating an event. Okay. You should, while we're here, also see though that most of us forget that there's actually other options that we can choose from. And I just want to do one quick thing here so I can tell you what I'm talking about. When I press create, or I go just click once into my calendar, okay, I can see I have the option of an event, out of office, task, reminder, or appointment slots. Okay. If I double click, I lose that. I've kind of skipped a screen. So no worries, just X out, and again, go to your plus create, or just click once into a slot. I do want you to eventually go to more options so you can see everything. But before you do that, Again, know that when you are creating an event, by default, it is an event. But should you want to create an out of office, and essentially you can do that by creating an event and just say I'm out of the office. But this just generally says out of the office. You have the option to automatically decline meetings that are already scheduled or that might be scheduled. And it will say I'm out of the office. So it kind of does the work for you. And then you should have the option of task and reminder. You don't see those right now. That's because on the left side of your calendar, you will be able to see a reminders calendar and a tasks calendar. And if those are not checked, they will not show up here. So you just need to check those. What those are is you have the ability to create tasks within your calendar right from here. I also have the ability to do it from my right side panel, this little blue check, and if you can see me all the way over, and when I press that, you'll see I use this pretty frequently. And so you can use tasks by creating right here in your calendar, and that's what all these little blue check marks are within the calendar up here. Just reminds me. It also gives it's a task, so it's my task list of what I need to do. I can put a due date on it, and then it shows up here, and then I can mark it as complete when I'm done. Then there's a little different one, which is reminder, which is this red option up here. And the reminder doesn't give you the place to put any detail, right? Like keep track of your task or put notes, but it gives you this idea of a reminder, and it will remind you. And then if you don't mark it as done, it will continue to move on. So this sample reminder you can see here on Monday, today, I actually created last week, but I never said, okay, I'm good with it, I'm done. So it continues to move on until I say I've done it. So the point is you can actually create those right here in your calendar as well. And if you create tasks, as you see, they show up in my calendar because these are the days that I've made them do, but they're also here in my task list where I can create a lot of other information and keep track. So you've got those options. I just like you to know, because most people just double click and start on with their event and don't even realize they have all of these other options that might make it that much easier, right? If you don't need to make an event to create yourself a task, because then when you do that, it looks as if you're not available for a certain period of time, right? That's what an event is doing. So if your point of an event is really to create a task for yourself or a reminder, you can still do that without keeping yourself out of the, looking like you're busy when you're not. And then the last one is appointment slots, which I'm happy to go over in more detail, but I'll just briefly tell you that what this is the idea of giving someone slots in which you're available. So while we know we can see if you're busy, I might say, you know what, Sheila, I want to meet with you, but I only have certain times and days that I want to kind of give you, right? Because that's what works for me. So you can see that a lot with sometimes with advising or with office hours or maybe a certain kind of event. You want to give access to people, to other people when you're free for that. We'll use office hours as an example. Here are my office hours. So rather than just say, here's my whole calendar, pick times and dates, I can pick appointment slots, which allows me to say, I'm available these days and these times. I can make it reoccurring. And then it actually gives me a link to that specific calendar. And then I send that link off and say, here, book some time with me. So if you ever do your maintenance for a car dealership, and you want to schedule your oil change, you might see a calendar like that where you can do it. You can actually do that right here from Google Calendar as well. So that's a nice feature. If you need help with it, feel free to let me know. I have other documentation on that, but do know that exists and is available. And then of course, in your more options is where you can go ahead and set some things up. So you can see here in notifications, if you remember a few minutes ago when I was in my settings for the test calendar, I set up all of these default notifications. I did that, so now I don't have to do them for every event. They're just here. But if I wanted to say, oh, you know what, for this event, I don't need that notification, I can exit out, and so forth. And when you have multiple calendars, realize that here you've got this calendar icon. I am by default putting it in my test calendar. But if for some reason I manage somebody else's calendar, or I wanted to put this in my department calendar, I need to select that calendar to make sure it's added to the correct place. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Easy enough to move it, but it's there. And then, as I started to say, with busy and free search, sometimes I do it even with the idea of, as I joke, maybe I don't want to walk across the hall for nothing. Like maybe these people aren't even there. So I want to see if somebody is available, and assuming that they keep their calendar up to date, I can do that. So even if I don't start writing in all the details, even a title yet, but I know I need to meet with someone. So I'm going to use Steve because he's a good, user to pick. I put Steve there. You can see on my left side, I have this guest. Right now, I just randomly have today's date, but I'm going to go here to find a time, which is to the right of event details. So by default, I'm in the details, but if I want to search somebody else's calendar, I can do that by going find a time. So I do that. Here I am. Today might not be a great day to meet with Steve until the afternoon. So I can say, you know what, right now it's pointless for me to walk over there or to schedule because he's busy, but here's a free time. And you can see if you scroll down a little bit, my test calendar isn't showing it because I don't have office hours, work hours, but you can see his are grayed out. And that's because he has his working hours set up, which I showed you earlier. So I can pick a time. Now that I know he's free at this time, I can go, you can see it's now auto-populated up here for the 8th at 3:30, and go back to event details, put in my title, I can put in my location, and then continue with any other details. One other added bonus to the free busy search, or we like to call it from our old Outlook days, is that with calendaring or scheduling, you can imagine with multiple people, and I know some of us calendar or schedule for other people in our office, that can get pretty significantly overwhelming when you're looking at a bunch of calendars. But just for the sake of visual explanation, I'm going to add a few other people to my calendar event here, just to give you an idea. So I'm just adding some more people here. So I've got about 4 people. Now, if I go to find a time, you can see it gets a little bit trickier, a little bit busier. Mike is unavailable all week. I know that he's grayed out, but I say, all right, well, now I add more people, and it gets even harder and harder to start peeking through. One nice thing is, if you look over here to my guest list, at the very bottom, I have suggested times. You may already know this, but if you don't, hopefully this will blow your mind. And the idea is I can press suggested times. And interestingly enough, there's no availability for all of us to meet. And the reason for that is because Mike, in this case, he's not a good example. I'm going to X him out. Let's try that again. Mike is completely unavailable, but that's okay. That tells me all of us could not meet all together this week because at least one person isn't available. So if I go to the 3 of them and myself, I can see here by suggested times, rather than going through day by day by day, Google will actually look at it all for me and say, here's when all participants can attend. So it does the work for me immediately. So whether it's 4 people or 10 or 20, and it starts shrinking down, I can go to suggested times, presuming that all calendars are kept up to date, right? This will do the work for me. And so you can select, I didn't even have to look this up. Google did it for me, on the 9th at 1 o'clock, everyone's free that I put here in this list. Then I can go here, add my title, go back to my event details, finish it off. So that's pretty cool. So that's your free and busy search and the idea of using suggested times. And then also know that if you're using a Google Meet link, that if you're the host, you do have a gear in your calendar. So you don't have to always wait until you get to your Google Meet. You can actually go in here and make sure you have your quick access on. That means that you can let everybody join before you or the host join. It allows them to have access and so forth. You want this off, of course. This happens a lot for younger students, right? If you don't want them to access the Meet before you or without you. but this is called a sticky feature basically. So once you select it, it stays. So if for this meeting, I uncheck it and I turn it off, any of my next meetings, I have to make sure I recheck it because it kind of sticks. And then breakout rooms. You can also create breakout rooms right from your calendar event. So for these people, I can actually put them in a certain breakout room because they're added to my guest list. So that was a feature that was long awaited for anyone that's doing that or interested in just kind of working it out. And these can be moved around once you're in your Google Meet. But another little hidden gem there is that gear, so you can do some more, have some more access to your Google Meet in advance of actually the event. A couple other new features are this kind of quick access or quick view this event, and you can see someone rather than actually like going to the staff directory or maybe opening up an email. I can actually hover over anyone within our domain's contact information. So with Joel here, being a good sport, I can hover over his name and I can see, right from here, I could send him an email. So again, I'm still in my calendar. I haven't even had to get out and go into Gmail. I can send him an email from here. I can open a message to chat with him. I could go ahead and start a Google Meet right from here, or go and schedule a calendar event just from that quick information. So some people might be aware of this, but if you're not, this kind of new hover and see this quick information is new. So the other option is I can open this detailed view and I can see any of our recent interactions. So calendar events or emails that we've had, including again, his contact information and so forth. So I can see all of that quickly. So something to be aware of if you're used to going out, getting back into your email, looking at the directory, just keep in mind that it's all accessible right here within your calendar event. And the next newest, skipped ahead here, the next newest feature, which you will be learning about from me any day now, is this idea of creating meeting notes. So within Google Docs, you can actually use a template called meeting notes, and that's it just sets up meeting notes and it looks really nice like this does. But in addition to that, within a calendar event, you can take meeting notes and create meeting notes. And what that means is basically what I love about it is it streamlines the creating and the sharing of a document like this. So the meeting that I have, I'll show you with Joel right now, you can see here how it says take meeting notes. So I'm just in my calendar event. I selected it once. I always edit it by going to my pencil up here, but I can see built in here, it says take meeting notes. So if I wanted to create this essentially from the start, I press this, and what happens is it's going to create this template for me that has the date, has the name of our event, and it has who's shared with it, who's attending it. And it also lets me know, because I'm taking them on the right, some of the people going to this event might not have access. Do I want to share this with them? And I'm like, yeah, you know what I do. So I'm going to share this, and it automatically will populate who I need to share it with based on my guest list. And I can give them whatever access I want, whether it's to edit it or to comment or just to view it, and then I can share it. So I didn't even need to go to share. It created it for me. Now it's by default creating, a checklist for me and this basic template of meeting notes, which is just kind of there. And now it's already shared with him. And if there are other people that get invited to this meeting as we go, so let's say I invite some other people, I can add Brian and I press save. I'm not sending it to him. It's going to remind me here too. Okay, well, do you need to also give him access because you've added him? So I really like that I don't have to worry about whether I've shared it with them or I need to double check. It just allows me to do that. So I think that's really awesome. And then as I alluded to, you can always edit events with your pencil. in the event if you are the one creating it as well. And then, don't forget that you can always make reoccurring. So here's your edit event. So it's the pencil. So maybe you need to go in here and add a Google Meet link. You can do that at any time, or add additional people, rooms, what have you. And then you can see here at the bottom where it says create meeting notes. So as I make this example, I could just immediately create this rather than save it and then take the notes. Either one does the same thing. What this does by creating it here is it will automatically share with anyone within this guest book, this guest area over here. So in any event, you can also make these, so you can see them, they're automatically added there. But you can always make your appointments repeat, your events repeat. You don't need to give yourself more work. You can customize your recurring meeting as well. So it doesn't have to be every day or every week. You can change it. Whether it's even a task, you can make those reoccurring and stick up in your, like so payroll or getting your timesheet. That's a weekly event you might need to be reminded of. You can throw that right on a task and it will be reoccurring. So always feel free to do that. The idea of organizing calendars, color coding calendars, those can be done as well. So here's an example. Don't get overwhelmed, but we have this, as I told you earlier, this student technician calendar. Now look at this. Now you can imagine if I have this up all day, plus my own calendar, I'd be quite overwhelmed. So what I love is that I can still see this calendar whenever I want, but I don't need to keep it selected all the time. It's the same with my test calendar or this best class. This is from a Google Classroom. This would let me see any of the assignments that I've assigned and so forth. I don't need to view that on a daily basis necessarily, or maybe I do. So for me, I select my main calendar. I'm always looking at that. But maybe sometimes I want to be able to see the tech calendar. I can throw that on there as well. So remember, you can always select and unselect as often as you want. You're not losing ability to see any of these. You're just making it so you're seeing what you want at that particular moment, date, month, whatever, as well. And you can also make these different colors. So for my test calendar on the left here, if I go to the 3 dots, I can change the color. I can change this anytime. Okay, so I can make this great. And so by default, any events in my test calendar will be purple. But if I wanted to, make this particular one a different color, I just have to right click and I can make this a different color. And if it's a reoccurring event, so if this example event, for instance, happened every week and I want that to stick out, I could make that particular event one color, and that would be the same color every week. So, work with what you have, certainly work with the colors, make your view easier with using different calendars, make the colors. So right now, I recently had a person whose calendar was very close in color with their boss. And so that could get a little tricky. So you might want to just go in here so you can see my calendar, and IT or student tech is kind of close in color. So I might want to, go and change mine to a different color so it sticks out when I'm in there, and so forth. So keep in mind that in addition to your settings, you do have the ability to select which calendars you want to see. If it's reminders and tasks, you want to keep those selected so you can use them. But if it's anything else, feel free to, look at them and uncheck them to make life a little bit easier. And the same with new calendars. You can always create a new or custom calendar. So my test calendar is for this. It's for test purposes. Nobody else needs to necessarily see it. I don't need to share it with anyone. Or I could make a calendar that's specific for my department. Maybe it's for time off, so we're aware of who's working when, or like our students. So everyone in the department can see who is working, when we have coverage, so on and so forth. So, feel free to use calendars in a way that might be helpful to you or your daily work, whether it's a calendar just for your reminders. You can go on and on with the ideas. It could be for a certain event, club, what have you. As you saw, I have quite a few, but they can stay organized because I've color coded them and I'm choosing to see which ones when as well. So new calendars can happen by you or anyone else. We talked a little bit about appointment slots already, but this will be in the in here in case you want to look at it a little bit further. And we also talked about deleting and restoring any appointments or events. If you maybe by accident put it in the trash, again, you have 30 days to remove it and restore it, and it will go back into your calendar to wherever it was in the first place. So those are the big features and the ideas that I wanted to really share and remind people of, that you can really get the most, bang for your buck, right? And the most efficient calendar if you're using them in this way. So, try to really keep in mind, keep that calendar up to date, use your working hours and your location so others can, create efficient meetings with you without having to go back and forth with a bunch of emails to massive amounts of people. Sometimes that has to happen, I realize, but the more we use these features, the easier it becomes. And I think we all want to save a little bit of time. So if we can do that, keep those settings up to date, make it easier for you so you have your notifications. So anything that feels right, make it work for you so you're in your calendar and not having to go in and out of it as often as possible. Make it so you can create an event, you can create notes, you can set up, hours and do everything in one fell swoop. I think that's a really nice ability now that Google has done that. So hopefully those features and ideas will allow you to kind of get familiar and find yourself being able to make better scheduling, more efficiently in one time versus getting in and out. But last but not least, as I promised, extensions. So because Google has built so much into their calendar, I can't tell you that there's really a lot that you would need an extension for. As we talk about Gmail tomorrow, I was gonna say next week, there are some extensions that are useful in that case, depending on how you use your email and your inbox. But calendar, there's really not a lot that's needing to be implemented that isn't already. The two that I do like to mention though are either Button for Google Chrome or Checker Plus for Google Calendar. And these, you can Google them or they're linked right here in the slideshow. And I'll show you what they look like. They do similar things, but you can see here, to my browser bar, I have two options. So this one with the purple, I'm gonna press it. This is the button for Google Calendar, and this gives me basically an agenda, right? So it's just another quick view. So right now I'm in Google Slides. Maybe I don't want to tab over to my calendar. I can see it there. And then you can go to the gear and you can set up some other items. So do I want to get notifications for all these other calendars? Maybe not. So that's just extra notification. I just started using that more for the purpose of checking it out. The one that I'm most familiar with is using this one, which is called Checker Plus. There's a Checker Plus for Gmail and a Checker Plus for Calendar. So this is Checker Plus for the calendar. And if you go to the three dots here, you'll be able to see it. So this one is a little bit, why I like this one is it gives you just a host of options. So you can see, I'm just in general up here, but this is my Checker Plus. Once you've downloaded it, it'll show up there. And so for me, you can see I've got something in 37 minutes. I can look quickly there, but I also can see here, I can highlight weekends, I can show snooze events, I can do a whole bunch of stuff. But specifically, I've got notifications right here over the second tab in. So you can have your ding, like if you are looking for the ding, you've got an event, you can turn that on. If you want someone to talk to you, right? So if you want Alex to talk to you,
hello,
you can do that. You don't have to. You can also have a pop-up window. So this is the idea that it's going to pop up even when you're not, looking at your calendar. So you're in the middle of something, that you can have that on there. And then you can add your notifications. When do you want that pop-up to happen? In 15 minutes, so on and so forth. And then this is going to just show up for my, what calendars and so forth. And then there's more options even down below. So you can see here specifically for my main calendar, I've got 5 minutes before an event, 10 minutes. Again, you can add additional, I have to sign in, sorry. If I was signed in, I could add additional notifications. And I can do the same for other calendars I have too, especially if I don't keep those open, right? Like if I'm not always looking at those calendars, I might want to get notifications. And there's more features that maybe even require additional expense, which I don't think you need at any point. They're just, I think it's really useful if you're looking for more notifications. Like I said, the ding, the pop-up, interrupts you regardless if you're in your calendar or not. So right now, I would get it popped up right on my screen if I had something, in the next 5 or 10 minutes. So Checker Plus does all of this, or like I said, button for Google Calendar. Either one is good to use, totally up to you. Again, I've used Checker Plus since the get-go, and I found it to be really helpful. And if I find that the notifications are too much, I can always scale them back, and it works pretty seamlessly. So those are the only extensions that I would really recommend. But if anything else comes up and you want to use something, feel free to let me know, or try it out. And you can always take it off as well. Well, that's it. That's what I have for Google Calendar. I know that was a lot in an hour, but hopefully it was enough to give you some guidance and make you think about using your calendar a little bit differently. And as I've said, a lot more efficiently.